What's going on, y'all? OJ back here with another video today. We're here to talk about UFC commentators and analysts. The guys you hear yapping as a fight is progressing along, and just ranking them based on how pleasant or not unpleasant they are listening to as you're watching fights. I'm going to be ranking every one of these analysts and commentators in a set of tiers in a couple of seconds. So without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the video. Okay, so we're gonna start off with the big three. And I'm gonna go with Joe Rogan. I'm putting Joe Rogan in the C tier. Now, for the most part, I think Joe Rogan's a terrible commentator in 2025. He doesn't know half of the fighters that are fighting on the event that he's commentating when he's talking on the mic and it's mainly his talking points, it's just the same old dull points like, oh, do they still wear steel cups? Get a good torque for the arm bar. Or he talks about how calf kicks changed the game. Oh, Benson Henderson changed the game with the calf kicks. Like, it's just so dull at this point. And it's clear he's checked out. He kind of doesn't know who the modern fighters are unless they're in the main event. I will say though, he is very good for people who have no idea what they're watching at first. Like, if you're someone who's just starting to get into the UFC, I think Joe Rogan, he's a good listen to for about like 4 months. But once you start watching all of the fights, you start tuning into fight nights from time to time. You start listening to all of the prelims of the pay-per-views. That's when you realize Joe Rogan has no idea what he's watching at the time. So, as iconic as Joe Rogan is, unfortunately, I'm going to have to put him in the C tier. All right, now moving on, we got Jon Anik. I'm gonna put Jon Anik. I'm gonna put him in the S tier. Now, recently, his commentary has been kind of slacking. He has been kind of parroting more off of whatever Daniel Cormier says. But for the most part, I think Jon Anik is the gold standard when it comes to commentating, play by play, because he's not annoying. He doesn't need to be his voice heard. He just says what's going on from time to time, whether it be 2 minutes left on the clock, or this fighter threw a jab and it wobbled this other guy's head back. Like, Jon Anik, he's very good at play by play. Doesn't really intrude whatever other commentators are talking, and I can appreciate Jon Anik whenever he's settling the other two big three commentators in Joe Rogan and Daniel Cormier from going on their bullshit tangents. So for the most part, I think Jon Anik is a very good commentator, and he's the gold standard for a play-by-play action. All right, now up next we got Daniel Cormier. I'm putting Daniel Cormier in the D tier. I'm sorry. Like, I understand he was a great fighter, but whenever I listen to him in the commentary booth, he is so obnoxious to listen to because he has this blatant bias for wrestlers, either from D1 American College or the Caucasus region fighters. Like, he is so blatantly biased for those fighters, and it's apparent in his commentary. Like, you could get a takedown as a wrestler and slam them on the ground, get like what 10 seconds of control time, and he'll automatically think that you won the round, even though the wrestler was getting busted up on the feet for like majority of the round. And it's very apparent that Daniel Cormier, he'll go on wrestling tangents all the time, which sometimes is insightful. Like whenever a fighter switches from a double to a single, like Daniel Cormier will break down the technique as to how that occurred, which I do appreciate. But if it's not breaking down techniques and stuff like that, Daniel Cormier, he just shows his bias. He doesn't even do research on most of the fighters at this point. He's been called out by it by other commentators in the past. And half the time I listen to Daniel Cormier, he's just eating at the commentary booth. Like, I'm watching an absolute scrap between two fighters on the prelims, and Daniel Cormier is munching on Cheetos. Like, Daniel Cormier, you should not be listening to him if you actually want to know what's going on in fights, because for the most part, Daniel Cormier, he's just going to be biased for wrestlers, and the other half of the time, he's just going to be eating at the desk. Okay, now moving on, I got Dominick Cruz. I'm putting Dominick Cruz in the B tier. Now, I understand that he can be a little bit snarky at times. He is very egotistical and condescending to other commentators or fighters who are on the cage. But I do appreciate Dominic Cruz's analysis into fights because he actually does his research. He does more research than almost anybody. And I can respect that because Dominic Cruz was a former champion. And most former champions, they don't do the same level of work as like the other commentators. And he does give good insight into techniques, whether it be in the striking, the jujitsu, or just mixing up the martial arts in general. Yeah, Dominic Cruz is very insightful. It's just the fact that he's a little bit egotistical, but fair enough. If you're like considered the greatest bantamweight of all time, at least during your generation, then I would be a little bit snarky and egotistical too. But you shouldn't be doing that in the commentary booth. But yeah, for the most part though, I do appreciate Dominic Cruz's commentary. All right, now up next we got John Gooden. I'm gonna also put him in the B tier. He doesn't really stand out, but he's all right at play by play, and he's not really heard, but I can kind of appreciate that. Because John Gooden, he'll just do what is required of him, which is just to let you know what's going on in between fights, when there's commercial breaks, and all that stuff. So John Gooden, while he doesn't stand out as like a A or S tier commentator, I do think he does his job well. Certainly better than Joe Rogan and Daniel Cormier, which is just letting people know what's going on in the middle of the fight. All right, now moving on, we got Michael Bisping. I'm gonna put Michael Bisping in the D tier. He also has biased commentary, not for specific styles or regions of the world like Daniel Cormier, but Michael Bisping is very biased for whatever fighter that the UFC wants to kind of grow as a potential superstar. Like during Israel Adesanya's title reign, like I remember Michael Bisping, whatever he was commentating in Adesanya's fights, he would automatically 4 rounds for Israel Adesanya. Like, bro, you cannot be doing that. Like, if it's a close round, you can't just say, "Oh, Israel Adesanya clearly won that round." I remember that back in the COVID era. He's also got a big ego, and I said the same thing about Dominic Cruz, but at least Dominic Cruz, he has insight. Like he analyzes fights very well, and his ego comes from the fact that he knows a lot more than other people. Michael Bisping, whenever he tries to fight other commentators in order to get his points across, it's never because he has like objective analysis. It's always because his voice is not being heard or it's being overshadowed at the moment. Like, oh, Michael Bisping's just ranting about his career, and in the middle of that, a big sequence occurs, like a fighter gets dropped and almost knocked out. And then Michael Bisping, though, he'll hold grudge to whoever interrupted him while he's like in the middle of a career tangent, and then he'll just like be almost spiteful to whoever's on the commentary booth with him. It's very annoying. I can argue he's worse than Daniel Cormier because at least Daniel Cormier, he's not openly hostile towards his other commentators. But that's what Michael Bisping does. So I can argue, although he has like funny jokes from time to time, he is the worst commentator on the commentary booth because all he does is try to argue with people, or he's just ranting about how great his career was. Okay, now moving on, I'm gonna go with Paul Felder in the A tier because I think he's the best fighter commentary. Like does a very good job of painting the color as to what is going on from the fighter's perspective. And he can be a little bit biased at times for Philly fighters or like fighters who formerly trained with him a lot. But that's most fighters on the commentary booth, and he only does that for a particular region, so it's very rare you see Paul Felder doing that. But for the most part, I think Paul Felder's very professional. He just does his research as to what fighters should and shouldn't be doing. Sometimes he even like chimes in on the play-by-play. And I think that Paul Felder, he's a very good commentator and arguably the best commentator who was once a former fighter, in my opinion. All right, now up next we got Laura Sanko. I'm gonna put Laura Sanko in the A tier as well. I do appreciate Laura Sanko's analysis. It's very clear that she's very knowledgeable at the sport, not just from the technical side of things. She's also knows what she's talking about when it comes to like uh just the what's going on, like the scoring criteria, uh how the referee should handle things whenever there's a foul going on, like all the intricate stuff that even like fans who've been watching the sport for a while that need to be reminded of. Laura Sanko does a very good job explaining those. My only issue with Laura Sanko though is she can be a little bit over dramatic at times. Like for example, a fighter gets dropped and it immediately gets back up. Laura Sanko is going like, "Oh my god, how's she still standing?" and all that. Like, relax. All right. We've seen worse where fighters have been getting nonstop ground and pounded and are still able to get up and continue the fight. Like Laura Sanko, she's a little bit overdramatic, but for the most part, I appreciate her as a play-by-play caller and as someone who can explain all of the intricate scoring criterias and stuff like that to the audience because I don't think most audiences are aware of that, considering the likes of Joe Rogan, Daniel Cormier are the main commentators in the UFC booth. All right, now moving on, we got Brendan Fitzgerald. I can argue that Brendan Fitzgerald is, I'm gonna put him in the A tier. Very similar to John Gooden, but the difference is I think Brendan Fitzgerald, he's just more memorable when it comes to voice. Like you almost forget that John Gooden's in the commentary booth because first off, he only commentates in the EU. And second off, he doesn't have the most memorable voice. But Brendan Fitzgerald, on the other hand, like, he fills in a similar role where he's mainly the play-by-play caller, but he has more things to say, and it's not really impeding on the fight or any other commentator and their quote unquote analysis. So I think Brendan Fitzgerald, for the most part, is very good. And I could see Brendan Fitzgerald being the successor to Jon Anik when Jon Anik decides to leave. And I think Brendan Fitzgerald will do a very good job filling in Jon Anik's shoes. Moving on, we got Dean Thomas. I know he's not a commentator, but he is an analyst, so I'm including him on this list. I'm gonna put Dean Thomas in the C tier. Dean Thomas, for the most part, has the most generic takes for his quote unquote analysis. Like whenever the commentary booth, like, oh, here's Coach Dean Thomas to give his analysis. Like Dean Thomas, he's like, oh yeah, so like JDM, he shouldn't get taken down. He needs to march forward and try to put the pressure on Islam Makhachev. Like, no shit. No shit. Like, can you explain anything in further detail? Because we've seen Islam Makhachev just dominate JDM on the ground for like 3 rounds. Can you give us an explanation as to what JDM should be doing rather than getting taken down at will? So I think Dean Thomas, he just says the most generic things. He's also very biased for the Philly fighters as well, so it kind of shows in his quote unquote analysis. He's also very biased against Muslim fighters, which, like, for example, like Hamza Chimaev, he's like talking about, oh yeah, like he's doing enough, but like I don't think it's a statement making performance or anything like that. Like, bro, shut up. Just give analysis as to what fighters should be doing in order to make adjustments. Like don't go into any more details about like oh he's not doing enough for like shut up. Dean Thomas, he is annoying as well, similar to Joe Rogan. And I do think that we need more analysts that are certainly better than Dean Thomas. But just considering Dean Thomas is the most recognized name, I don't think we're gonna have any good analysis in the UFC analysis desk for quite some time. All right, now moving on, we got Anthony Smith. You know what? I'm gonna put Anthony Smith and Chael Sonnen together because they come in as a duo and they're both awful at their job. Anthony Smith and Chael Sonnen are basically mouthpieces for the UFC team, They just parrot whatever the UFC wants them to say. They never offer any sort of good analysis. Half the time, Smith is talking about his career on how he never quit. It was apparent in the Tom Aspinall fight where Anthony Smith's talking about, "Oh, when I was in Singapore, I decided to fight on against Ryan Spann." Like, bro, shut up. Nobody cares. And for Chael Sonnen as well, he's riddled with CTE, waffling on absolute nonsense. Like the guy was talking about how fighters train with their eyes closed because a cut could happen across the eye, and you're just gonna have to deal with that. Like, brother, shut up. Nobody asked you. So Anthony Smith and Chael Sonnen, they're the worst analysts on the desk. They're both two peas in the pot, just two brain dead, mush brained retards who are just spewing on absolute nonsense, talking as if they know what's going on. So Anthony Smith and Chael Sonnen, for the most part, yeah, do not listen to them when they're on the analyst desk. All right, now up next we got Kamaru Usman. I'm also gonna put Kamaru Usman in the D tier. Like Kamaru Usman, quit yapping and fight somebody. Whatever Kamaru Usman's on the analyst that he's like, oh yeah, Carlos Prates look really good in there, but like, hey, he's gotta beat the former champion in order to get a title shot. Like, shut up, brother. Like, you're not relevant. Like, Carlos Prates and all those guys you criticize, they are way higher ranked than you right now, right? And Kamaru Usman, the thing is, he talks as if he's still fighting. That's my main issue with Usman. Like, if he was fighting like pretty regularly and he was still on the analysis desk talking like that, I'd have no problem with it whatsoever. But Kamaru Usman, he fights like once a year or maybe two, and talks as if like he's any relevant name whenever a welterweight is doing well in the division. So like Kamaru Usman, shut up, get back in the cage, fight somebody, or get off the analyst desk. I do not need to hear Kamaru Usman yapping on absolute nonsense when it comes to welterweight fighters that he potentially might have to fight. All right, now moving on, we got Michael Chiesa. I'm gonna put Michael Chiesa in the C tier. I think he does a decent job when it comes to talking about like fighter techniques and stuff like that. But my main issue is I don't think Michael Chiesa belongs on the analyst desk. I'm sorry. Like maybe it's because he's just there. Like I don't know what he does well. Like does he provide good analysis? Yes. But other than that, I don't remember a single time Michael Chiesa's really said anything groundbreaking. And he's just there for extra space. That's what it feels like to me. So even though Michael Chiesa doesn't step out of line like Anthony Smith, Chael Sonnen, or Kamaru Usman, I don't think Michael Chiesa is the best at analysis. And it kind of shows because he never really has anything interesting to say when he's in the analysis booth. All right, now last but not least, we got Dustin Poirier. I think Dustin Poirier should be in the B tier. I think he's a great an analyst. I'm sorry. I think he has great analysis for fights. The problem is he doesn't do it enough. Like it's very rare to hear from Dustin Poirier on the analyst desk. I do hope that he actually makes a career as an analyst in the future, but for the most part, I just don't know whether or not Dustin Poirier is going to be a long time analyst on the UFC booth. So I'm gonna put him in the B tier for now. But if he's more active, I could certainly move him up to the A or maybe even the S tier going forward. All right, that's going to be it for this video. If you guys want to see more videos like this, please make sure to like and subscribe so we can monetize this channel. Outside of that, though, leave a comment down below how you guys feel about these commentators and analysts. Who do you prefer to listen to? All right, I think like the top commentators, they're a little bit subjective, but I think the ones that we don't rate all that highly, I think it's pretty objective at this point. But regardless, leave a comment down below regarding your opinions. And outside of that, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.